Hi friends, host Eric here, host of Talking with Famous People, and today I'm going to do top 5 MBTI myths and the reality. Myth number 1. Type is an expression of preferences. No, it's not. According to me, and I want to stress that all of these opinions here are according to me. It's not according to anybody else. And a lot of TE people will say, well, therefore it's less valid. But I don't know. Take it for what you want. Type derives from an implicit intentional configuration. My own experience, that's why what I'm deriving this from, suggests type is determined very young, if not at birth. Existence necessitates an attentional element. This is a sort of an objective reason to believe this. It's inherent to agency. Thus, children are born attending and rapidly become an individual manifestation of their base and tool functions. Alright, pretty exciting stuff. Let's look at myth number 2. Yeah, type's not preference. It's descriptive of which configuration of the possible configurations you have. Some people, myth number 2, some people are borderline. Thinking and feeling are approximately equivalent, for example. I'm half expert at half introvert. I'm a E/INTP. No, you're not. No, it doesn't work like that. Function configuration is an expression of slot mechanics. All types manifest each manner of attention at least occasionally, but they do so in a fashion consistent with their habitual prioritizations. So what I'm getting at here is that no matter how much you've developed your TI, let's say you're an INFJ who seems very TI heavy, it doesn't make you borderline. It means you're an INFJ who grew up in an environment and or chose for whatever reason to display a lot more TI. But that's not what's really going on in your head. The reason why nobody's borderline is because if your tool functions FE, like Kim's, when she watches something, she's paying attention to the social interactions, how they relate to each other hierarchy-wise, how everybody's feeling, how they're doing socially in terms of success or failure. She's not paying attention to the logic of the arguments. She can. She says, I can pay attention to FE. But even if she was habituated to using TI in lots of contexts, it would be something she'd have to make herself do, remind herself to do. Okay, so yeah, there are no borderlines. Everyone's their type and that's it. There are different expressions of type for sure, and that's going to come up a little bit later here. Third myth. Type can change over the course of a person's lifetime. Cannot. It's only distantly possible to understand anyone of a different type. We definitely do grow and change, and we do so via an architecture of reflexive values and approaches that comprises our configuration. Myth number 4. Actually, let me go back to myth number 3 for a second. It's only distantly possible to understand anyone of your type. What I mean by this is we might understand ourselves to have grown to become a lot more, say, emotionally fluent, or a lot more emotionally engaged, or a lot more prone to embracing emotion, something like that. But it doesn't change the fact that it's still my polar, for example. I'm pretty moist for an ENTP. I got a lot of FI in the mix. I like FI, I guess, or something. I mean, I don't really know what to do with it, but I recognize its value and importance, and anyway, regardless of how moist I get, I will never switch into an ENFP. I will still by default deal with things logically. Even if much of my life becomes about circumstances that don't require logic, I'll still attempt to do that. I'll have to learn to enjoy things on a different level, you know? But it won't change who I am. Let's go down to the fourth one. There are two basic types of functions, judging and perceiving. This is wrong. There are four basic types of functions: action, knowing, interface, and judging. Each of these comes in an experiential, physical variety and in an abstract, metaphysical variety. Action functions are SE and NE, interface functions are TE and FE, knowing functions are SI and NI, and judging functions are FI and TI. And an interface function is always paired with a judging function, and an action function is always paired with a knowing function. So if you got SE, you got NI. If you got NE, you got SI. If you got TE, you got FI. If you got FE, you got TI, etc. The reason it's important to make this distinction, and yeah, this is something that's a distinction of mine, it's not something I read anywhere, but it became abundantly obvious to me that it was necessary to make this distinction because the whole mechanics of the whole thing works properly when you understand it in this sense. Obviously, action, you are action first, then you're seeking better knowledge. You're knowledge first, you're seeking better action. If you are interface first, you're seeking better judgment. If you're judging first, you're seeking better interface. One way or the other. The interface functions have three manifestations of themselves. They receive, get, and put information. Judging functions evaluate it. Knowledge functions deal with it once it's been evaluated, one way or another. And action functions make shit happen. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple stuff. Okay. The last of these myths is that socionics has this shit all figured out. Socionics offers a lot of good insight, particularly about intertype relations. However, it is also a morass of unwarranted complication. Unsubstantiated socionic claims include dimensionality. There is no reason to believe that one can only use a function in a given set of dimensions based on where it is in its slot placement. I know for a fact that I can use FI even across time. In other words, I am perfectly capable of noting that something made me feel bad and to anticipate that if I do something it's going to make me feel bad in the future and thereby avoid it. Now, is that really using FI? I don't know. I mean, it is bipolar. I'm not as wise about it as other things, but I can think of different ways in which the dimensionality notion can be easily proved wrong. Blocks. Why do they have them in these blocks? They're not meaningful. They get the numbers wrong. I mean, the stacks as they're understood through Jungian typology, you got your first four, your conscious functions. Now, I don't necessarily agree with this conscious-unconscious distinction that Jung makes. It's not exactly right. Socionics is correct in saying that there's a valuing aspect as well as a strength aspect. I don't like to use the term of people having strength in cognitive functions. I think it's more about there's a comfort aspect to it, and that's where a lot of these other conclusions come from. So obviously you're more comfortable with functions that you use all the time, but it doesn't. Yes, is it true that I've got good TE? Yeah, I actually do have good TE. In terms of what, though? Well, it means when I use it, I can successfully attain greater efficiency by it and do things kind of less stupid than I did before. A little bit. That's about as good as it's going to get for me. It's not valued in the sense that I don't like it, because it's the alternative, it's the particularist alternative to my preferred tool function, which is universalist. Subtypes. I don't know about subtypes. I mean, what I see are people who utilize different aspects of interface functions, for example. Now, one subtype that everything I've read about it in socionics seems right on the money is the FE or SI subtype of ISFJ. I've got clear examples of both in my life, and distinctions seem right on the money. However, other subtypes I find troubling. For example, NE or TI subtypes of ENTPs. I typically have always identified as an NE subtype of an ENTP, but when I looked at descriptions of those subtypes for socionics, I found myself, well, first of all, the romantic description of one of those writers, I fit quite well with the TI subtype, and in the non-romantic or elsewhere in life description, I fit quite well with the NE subtype. And these are the sort of things that subtypes cause problems with. There's no inherent reason why an individual would be a subtype that prioritizes either their first or second, their nature or their tool function. Everybody prioritizes their nature. Whether they do so in a way that is more expressive of the tool function or whether it's less expressive of the tool function, that seems not so much a matter of subtype as it does a matter of just variation within a type. Now, granted, they do actually have a warrant for their subtypes, which has to do with energy states or something like that. I don't remember. I've read it, but I don't really remember it that well. Anyway, that's why I put a caveat there. I'm not saying it's totally unsubstantiated, but I'm not really buying it. Mental and vital rings, I looked into this shit. It's garbage. There's no substantiation for it at all. It makes no sense whatsoever. And there's going to be some slot mechanic issues. And the reason there's going to be slot mechanics issues is because they're not distinguishing between the knowledge functions and the action functions. They're calling them all perceiving functions. They're not going to understand the mechanics of things very well unless they understand, foremost, that these things are metaphysical physical conversion methodologies. That we do work with them. And in fact, I made a little thing down here. I'll read it to help explain this a little bit. TI converts experience to meaning and legitimizes the meanings via the rules of meanings. FI converts meaning to experience and legitimizes via the experience, the authenticity of the experience. SI archives experience as knowledge. Let's say knowledge being meanings not in dispute, and extrapolates therefrom to predict, whereas NI experiences resonance from the meanings themselves and understands the self as an object within those systems. Extroverted intuition generates new meanings through linkage to existing meanings, SI, and deals in conclusions, narratives, and conditionalities. Sometimes these meanings drive physical action and execution, but the action of extroverted intuition is itself non-executive. SE creates new physical data from which to make meaning and follows through on that which has already been decided, meanings already made. It's the doing part. TE understands the methods of attainment. TE is always paired with FI because the manner of logic expressed through extroverted thinking requires a specific desired outcome. TE is particularist. Heuristics can be helpful, but effective TE is always customized to the goal pursued. In other words, measure twice, cut once is only a good rule if you're not doing rough cuts, or if you need a lot of precision in your cut. If I'm cutting somebody's hair, I can't measure twice at all because I'm not doing a measurement. Anyway, FE understands the workings of motivations. FE is always paired with TI because both functions require static approximations of experience and meanings to do their ontological work. Because while we can know the fluid actuality of our own feelings, we can only know the approximate motivations, perceptions, and emotional states of others. And that's what FE deals with. So, anyway, there's my top 5 myths of MBTI, and with a little bonus physical explanation. Everyone's, of course, welcome to disagree with anything I say about cognitive functions, and if you can find a good angle of attack, shove it up my ass. Shove my wrongness up my ass. However, I've been thinking about this stuff for a long time, and I've had a number of false starts where I thought I had something figured out and didn't. Basically, there's not a whole hell of a lot to it, I don't think. I think the key insights that I may bring to the table, or they may have been made by other people before, but I'm not familiar with them from other people, are the ways in which these things manage manners of objectivity and subjectivity. It's important to remember, though, there's a difference between the agent, I, the subject, and a subject. So it's that third level that complicates things substantially. And that's why we have things like FI and FE. And, well, it's because we have to understand and make meanings, we have to position somebody as an actor and something as receiving action. We have to position these things in relation to ourselves as well. We have to understand what's happening in the world according to an objective metric, like NI or TI or FE. We've got to understand what's happening in the world according to a subjective metric, such as SI or FI or TE. And a lot of TE-minded people get very upset when I call TE subjective. But that's simply because they're not understanding what those words mean, subjective and objective. Subjective means it's of the subject. It's particular to the subject. It's not universalizable. And so when we're talking about TE, we're talking about pursuing goals that are specific to the actual shit that's going on, that are not you know, whatever. I lost my train of thought because that comment popped up. Anyway, everybody's got their opinions about things. You know, TE is definitely subjective because the only way to verify that you did something intelligently is to check against the entirely subjective and particularist goal that you are pursuing. And if you do in fact pursue that effectively, then you've got good TE. In contrast, TI requires one to withstand scrutiny against a backdrop of validity and dealing in statuses of truth. And so, well, but my personal situation means blah, 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 is never an acceptable answer in TI land. So, that's why TI is objective and TE is subjective. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, don't be afraid to share it in one of your favorite sharing locales, such as Quora or Reddit or or even Facebook. I would like to become as successful as Captain YouTube. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.